And of course, as I said before, that is Candace Anderson, who actually has a psychotherapy practice. Candace, are you there?
I'm here. How are you,
Good,
Denise?
good. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's
Good.
pretty, it's a great, again, the show has been good at segueing from one, topic to the next. And I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
Shevry for making sure we do that. And if you had one word, that you would, I guess you heard the interview, and if you had one word or one message you could give to Maurice and his family, what would that be?
Certainly for them, if they felt the need to seek a therapist who was culturally competent in understanding the implications of what not only he, but his parents, in those moments of separation from him as he's going through, possible war, seek some support with trying to integrate that experience into their psyche in a very healthy way.
you know um this whole issue of mental health, thankfully is growing. It's no longer something that people are trying to hide or sweep under the rug. They're basically saying, today, which is a good thing, I do
Mm-hmm.
need help. But
Mm-hmm.
always finding that help is a challenge. Tell us about your practice and what you started. I mean, you went to Howard, now you're out, trying to save the world or save the minds of the world. Put it that way.
Yeah, so I did. I finished at Howard. My graduate degree is from Troy University, and that's located in Alabama. My physical practice is in Alabama, but I serve the state of Alabama, Georgia, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. Those are my virtual care areas. And so with my practice, it's a little different than most. First and foremost, less than 4% of therapists in America are Black, right? So having a Black therapist is a rarity. And in my practice, I center the mental health of African Americans. I also use a lot of ancestral psychotherapy, so therapy that brings in the wisdom and the knowledge of generations of our ancestors, of our different faiths, our belief systems. Those things are also welcome in the therapy room. One of the things that I say lovingly, and people think it's funny, but I invite all of us, our bonnets, our braids, our hair half done, whatever it is that allows us to show up in a way that we can be our true and authentic self. It's 100% welcome in the space that I've created.
How did you decide to get into the mental health field?
I would say it was several influential people in my life, mostly during my time at Howard University as an undergrad psych student. And that was Dr. Jules Harrell and Dr. Campbell and Dr. Ronald Hobson. And they really opened my eyes to the way the brain worked, the way that we're affected by systemic racism, the way that your healing can be independent of anybody else. Because for Black people, one of the things that contributes significantly to the stigma attached to mental health therapy is, well, what will my family think about it? Will me going to therapy be an indictment on the way that I was raised? Will it make my mom, my dad, Big Mama upset? So those influences helped me to shape the way that I wanted to practice and the healing that I wanted to be able to bring forth in the Black collective.
Earlier today, I had the honor of moderating a panel with Melanie Campbell, who runs the Black Women's Agenda. There's a whole auditorium full of Black women. The panel was consisted of 5 Black women who work in the White House in various positions.
Mm-hmm.
And, the whole conversation was, strong Black women.
Mm.
But let me ask you, because you talk a little bit about that. You talk about what you call the strong Black women or woman syndrome. And while we're in
Mm-hmm.
Women's History Month, uh, you know, well, I'll tell that story later. But, I'm just wondering, is that a positive thing, or does it negatively impact us when we
So
keep talking about being
let's
strong?
look at it from a space of neutrality, and let's allow people to make their own judgment about it, because everybody's experience is different. But what I like to educate Black women on when they come and they sit on my sofa is that the strong Black woman syndrome is actually based in white supremacy. It's a racist trope. It is a belief that Black women are workhorses, that we don't feel pain, that we are hardened to emotion, that we have a super human quality about us, that we can make it through anything unscathed. And this belief system contributes to the health disparities that not only affect mental health, but physical health. Black women, our number one cause of death is heart disease, right? Stress. We have fibroids at a rate of 3 to 4 times higher than our white cohorts. We are killed far more frequently, about 3 times more than white women in romantic relationships that where DV exists, right? So we are the least respected and the least protected. So when we subscribe to the belief that we're strong Black women, we are women of strength, but we have to acknowledge vulnerability, because when we don't, we become numb. And when we become numb, we don't acknowledge the pains, the signals in our body and mind that say, hey, something's out of balance. Something's going on here. And so that is the reason that I'm trying to shift the narrative around what it means to be strong, because vulnerability, feeling emotion, taking a break, making the radical decision to put yourself first is not an indictment on your strength as a Black woman.
I want to thank you for that. I got to go now because I got to go and relax and kind of de-stress.
Good.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just, because, we carry, and that was a story I was going to tell. Someone said, if a younger millennial type person told, someone, I can't remember who it was an older person, this, I love you and I appreciate you and I stand on your shoulders, because if it were not for you, and she turned around and said, get off of my shoulders.
Hello.
My shoulders are heavy enough as they are. Go stand on your own 2 feet. Get off of my shoulders. It was a funny scenario that I saw, but let me ask you about COVID too. How has this pandemic impacted your clients, and what have you had to do to get them through, because we're almost on the other side of this right now, but people are going to carry this with them for
so COVID is certainly a trauma. COVID is certainly a trauma on a both personal, relational level, little t trauma, but it's also a big T, because the entire world was adversely affected. And as a result of COVID, we've had to change the way that we do business, the way that we connect with our families, friends, our social activities. So we've all had some sort of adverse experience with COVID. I saw a significant increase of the need for therapy. I was overwhelmed. I could not take any more patients, because 78% of Americans had an increase in their stress as a result of the COVID pandemic. So, as with anything, because of systemic racism, Black people, brown people, people of color, but certainly Black people, we experience the ills and the ills of the world at a greater rate, right? When America gets a cold, Black people get the flu. We're used to that analogy, and that certainly was the case. We lost our jobs because we are mostly service industry in our work, and we were greatly affected because of health conditions and predispositions. So it has had a significant increase on our well-being, a significant negative impact on our mental health as a collective.
So you mentioned the states where you do business, and Washington D.C. happens to be one of them, and it's a
Yes.
virtual business. How does that work? And are there still you you said you ran out of time for new patients, but is that changing? So somebody says I need to call her,
Yeah, it
and they're in
certainly
the
can.
D.C. area. How does it work?
Yeah. So you would just go to my website just like you would anywhere else. While the physical location is in Alabama, I also do telehealth in every state where I'm licensed. So in DC, our session would be via telehealth. So you could do it in your car, at home, at work, in your office. You don't have to worry about trying to take extra time off to get to an office to be seen. You can do it from the comfort and the privacy of your own space. And so you would just go to my website, request an appointment, and I would get you in that way.
Oh, my last question, and
Sure.
that is, for a therapist
Hmm.
and for the patient or the
Hmm.
client, I'll put it that way. How do you know when you're actually making progress? How do you know when the work has been
Hmm.
successful? Either on either side.
Yeah, yeah. So let's speak clinically first. So
Okay.
my job as a clinician would be to one, get a baseline of what's happening. So I might ask you to fill out some questionnaires that get that assign some numbers to the level of stress or anxiety or depression or impairment that you're experiencing. And then as we start to work through and process and you learn new skills and new tools, I'm going to ask you to fill out those same questionnaires again so that I can figure out, okay, is there a decrease, right, in these numbers to the impairments that I'm observing? And then also, I'm looking at your body language. I'm looking at the stories that you're telling. I'm looking at what you say, how you say it, you recalling experiences from work and your everyday life to see if something has changed. Now, the client or the patient, certainly will notice, well, these relationships are getting worse or getting better. Both can be a positive as far as mental health are concerned. They may notice that they're able to tolerate stress a bit better than they would before, where they say, oh, well, I was able to ground myself versus, hanging up the phone or walking off. I was able to be present, ground myself, and put up a boundary that allowed me to withstand the discomfort. So it really depends upon what the person is experiencing. But certainly what I've noticed is that people see changes in their daily life that are in contrast to what their complaints were when they first start the therapeutic process.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
good. So I'm going to tell one little personal story, and then we're going to go. I keep saying I'm going to go
Okay,
because we're way over
great.
time. But I mean, I confess, I too had visited a therapist once, and I
Yeah.
stopped going because I got angry with him because
Mm.
he kept asking me, Denise, what is it that you're so upset about? And I would tell him, and he kept saying, well, are those helping Denise thoughts or hurting Denise thoughts? And I'm like, well, I'm here because they hurt, and I want
Hmm.
you to fix it. And he kept saying, so why are you thinking those thoughts? And I said, because, and finally, he would always ask me that. It took me years of
Mm.
being away from him to
Hmm.
understand helping and hurting thoughts.
Mm.
What do you have to
Hmm.
say about that? I mean, I'm not asking you to
Um,
critique him,
oh
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Certainly not.
yeah,
Certainly
yeah.
not. But I always encourage those who I support that if at any time in our work together, because my approach is collaborative, this is not me telling you what to do, but this is us working together to get you where you want to go. And so I always encourage those who I support to be open and to give me feedback as to whether or not something that we're doing is working or not. Is it frustrating you? If it's frustrating you, let's talk about that. If you want to try something new, let's do that as well. But I've heard stories where, people didn't have the best experience and they stopped going, right? They cut the graduation from their session short because there's some frustration, but that's part of the therapeutic process as well. And a knowledgeable and seasoned and attuned clinician would be able to explore that with you and to use that, because that could be a sign that there's some frustration in other places of your life. So it just really depends upon how the clinician decides to use the information they're given.
Well, sometimes I know, I guess the point I was trying to make with that is that, we have to be receptive. And it took me a couple of years to hear what he
Yeah.
was saying and to
Hmm.
adopt it. And
Yeah.
he has now gone on to glory, but I certainly do appreciate him
Mm-hmm.
saying that to me. Are those
Yeah.
helping Denise thoughts or
Uh-huh.
hurting Denise thoughts?
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it, the process is different for everyone, Denise. So,
yeah, yeah,
it could be a month, a year, or 5 years before that thing that your therapist mentioned in a session comes full circle, and you're
yeah,
able to say, "Oh, that's what it was." So I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, send me a bill. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for,
It's on me. It's on me.
yeah, thank you. But I hope people will
Yeah.
reach out. It's a wonderful thing, and I'm glad that we're trying to take the stigma away from, getting therapy and mental health. And definitely appreciate the fact that you're available to our viewers here in the DC area. So,
It's my home. I will be DC until I transition and close my eyes. But I was happy to be able to serve my hometown.
wonderful,
Uptown
wonderful.
salute. Yes.
All right, okay. Thanks, Candace
You're
Anderson.
so
Thank you
welcome.
for being with us. And
Thank
again,
you.
remember, we're going to put up the website one more time
Okay.
so folks can
Awesome.
reach out. Yep,
Thank
yep,
you.
revitotherapywellness.com. You have a calm afternoon, a wonderful day, and
You
thanks
too.
again for being with us. Okay,
Thank you for having me.
my pleasure.
Where do you come to get